the custom mini yellow Speedboat skims smoothly across the water. It can run at quite a high speed on the small canal. The driver confidently steers the boat, weaving through with ease. After the test run, the Speedboat is pulled ashore to rest. Now we will look at the construction process, starting with the molds. The mold pieces are assembled together to form the basic shape. Next, the builder opens a specialized wax box for mold release. The wax is applied evenly over the mold surface for easy demolding later. Every nook and cranny of the bow mold is carefully coated with wax, preparing to cut the acrylic sheets to make auxiliary partitions for the mold, using glue to secure these partitions to the red mold, assembling the final partition to complete the square mold shape.
Starting to pour an amount of clear composite resin into a small jug, adding the catalyst and gray pigment into the freshly poured resin mixture, stirring well to blend the resin and pigment until a uniform consistency is achieved, brushing the first layer of gray resin onto the waxed mold surface. This layer will form the smooth exterior surface of the boat once cast, rolling out the pure white fiberglass rolls to prepare for cutting. Cutting the fiberglass into small, fitting pieces for easier molding application, mixing an additional batch of composite resin to soak the fiberglass, adding hardener to the pre-mixed resin, and stirring thoroughly, laying the first fiberglass sheet onto the dried gray base coat. First, using a roller to soak the resin and press the fiberglass, removing air bubbles. Second,
applying multiple overlapping fiberglass layers to increase rigidity. Third, continuously rolling and brushing resin so the fiberglass evenly covers the bow surface. The box-shaped partition from earlier is also lined with fiberglass similarly. Sprinkling additional powder into the corners and brushing resin thoroughly to reinforce the partition edges. Waiting for the fiberglass and composite resin to dry and cure completely. Using a utility knife to trim away excess fiberglass around the box edges. Tapping lightly with a nylon hammer to detach the acrylic partitions from the product. Prying along the grooves to slowly remove the box mold. Lifting the red mold off the newly cast composite block. Continuing to pry the burrs off the hull edges with a flathead screwdriver and peeling them off. Tapping carefully with a hammer to detach the bow mold, helping the resin separate from the wax. The bow shell has been completely separated and is very smooth on the front. Step 4, processing. Doing the same for the edge of the remaining lower half of the hull. Applying force to lift the hull shell away from the mold. The raw details of the boat after casting look very sharp and intact. Using a hand grinder to decisively trim away the rough excess edges. The builder meticulously grinds closely along each curve of the bow, hand sanding the entire hull surface to prepare for the painting stage. Sanding while rinsing with water so the composite surface becomes smooth and dust-free. Using a wet sanding block to carefully polish every blind corner and raised contour. Two builders sand together
on the rear hatch to speed up the process. The air scoops on the boat's rear hatch also have their surfaces and blind corners smoothed, preparing the yellow acrylic paint, adding solvent into a cup to thin it out,
using
chopsticks to stir thoroughly for a bright yellow paint mixture, ensuring a uniform consistency, starting to use a spray gun to apply a coat of yellow paint onto the hull parts, spraying evenly for an accurate, vibrant color without drips or smudges, a glossy yellow finish. Start covering the dull gray shell, perfectly right from the beginning. Move on to making the spoiler. Use a tape measure to mark and measure on the wooden board. Use a paper template to trace the detailed shape of the spoiler onto the wood surface. Use a hand grinder attached with
a saw blade to cut the wooden board along the marked lines. Sand the newly cut wooden parts to remove splinters and smooth the surfaces. 2. Use a power drill to assemble the parts of the spoiler together to form its shape. 3. Spray a layer of light gray primer onto the wooden spoiler's surface. Returning to the boat hull pieces, spray another layer of gray primer to protect the base, then continue applying a bright yellow paint coat over the newly primed gray base. All the boat hull parts have been uniformly painted yellow and neatly stacked. Use old newspapers to completely cover the yellow surface. In preparation for the color detailing step, apply masking tape along the raised contour lines to create sharp boundaries. Use a precision knife to gently cut along the edges and meticulously peel off the excess tape. Use extra tape to secure the newspaper edges, completely covering all surrounding surfaces. The boat's roof has been carefully masked off, leaving only the areas to be accented exposed. Continue applying masking tape to shape the borders for the rear compartment cover. Newspapers are wrapped around the rear cover, leaving only the raised triangular shapes exposed. This masking process requires patience, so the decorative paint doesn't bleed through the edges. Press the edges of the masking tape tightly to ensure the upcoming black paint won't seep through. Trim the sharp corners of the tape so the mask fits perfectly along the borders. Start using a spray gun to apply black paint onto the exposed recesses. Spray glossy black paint onto the top. To create a faux windshield effect for the roof, touch up the missed black borders at the boat's sharp front corners to make them solid. Spray black paint to completely cover the raised triangular shapes on the rear compartment cover. The wooden spoiler is also sprayed with a strong, solid black coat. 4. Hold the spray can and quickly sweep it to cover every corner and crevice of the spoiler. Once the black paint is dry to the touch, slowly peel off the masking tape and newspaper. Carefully tear off the pile of newspaper to avoid accidentally scratching the fresh black paint. 4. The exposed black patches look sharp, creating an impressive contrast with the yellow base coat. 4. Spray an additional clear glossy top coat to protect the entire surface. The completed paint coat is glossy. The two black and yellow color bands combine for a very sporty look. Place the boat's roof shell onto the main hull's cockpit base and secure it with screws along the edges. Drill holes and tighten screws to attach the rear bordering mask tightly to the boat hull. Screw the L-shaped side trim into place and tighten the screws to hide the seams. Attach the cover assembly and the rear air scoop compartment to the back of the mini boat. Place the wooden sports spoiler onto the compartment cover and press the alignment pins. 1. Take a short plastic pipe, press it against the boat's rear, and use a ballpoint pen to draw a circle for the exhaust hole. 2. Use a hole saw drill bit to cut out the drawn hole at the rear to attach the exhaust pipe. 3. Spray paint 2 plastic pipe sections black for the fake exhaust tips. Wait for them to dry, then insert them into the holes. Apply a ring of silicone sealant along the inside edge to secure and waterproof the fake exhaust pipes. Mix a basin of soapy water and wash away all the dust on the glossy hull. Apply the decals. Featuring decorative speed arrow patterns along the bottom edges on both sides of the boat, gently place the 2 black plastic backrest seats inside the empty cockpit. The mini boat has completed its exterior shell along with the spoiler. And very cool air scoops prepare to weld the pulley assembly that redirects the steering from the main steel shaft and centering aluminum disc. Screw the square mounting plate in place to secure it to the aluminum steering gear assembly. Install the red and black decorative cover of the steering wheel onto the steel control shaft. Route the control cable bundle and use pliers to attach it, tightening it to the steering lever pin. Brush on composite resin and apply fiberglass sheets. To reinforce the engine mount base inside the hull, start by unboxing the Toshima engine to prepare for assembly. This is a 6.5 HP gasoline engine, the heart of the boat. Install a metal connector onto the engine shaft to connect to the propeller shaft. Use a hammer to drive the connector tightly onto the shaft to ensure a secure fit. After welding it in place, wipe away any dirt around the shaft. Install a thermal insulation gasket onto the engine's connecting flange. Next, install the metal flange and tighten the mounting screws. Use a wrench to tighten them securely to prevent water leaks during operation. Cut a round hole in the stern to route the drive shaft through. Insert the shaft assembly through the hole and screw the flange onto the hull. Proceed to weld the metal parts at the stern into place. Apply silicone sealant around the shaft to prevent water from leaking inside. Moving on to welding the steel frame for the propeller steering system, the steel pipes are cut, fitted, and welded together to form the steering arm. This is the preliminary shape of the steering mechanism after welding. Use a grinder to smooth the welds for aesthetics and safety. Prepare plastic bushings to insert into the swivel joints. Drive the plastic bushings firmly into the ends of the steering frame's steel pipes. Measure and cut a metal rod to serve as the main pivot shaft. Thread the shaft through the plastic bushings to create a smooth pivot joint. Test fit the steering arm assembly onto the main shaft at the stern. Weld the rudder blade to the steel frame to provide steering force. Grind the newly welded parts until they are flat and sharp. Assemble the cable mechanism to connect the steering wheel to the rudder. The steering cable is attached to one end of a lever on the steering shaft. Test the pulling mechanism's ability to turn the rudder blade, turn the steering wheel to see if the transmission system to the rear is smooth. Install screws to secure the protective trim around the boat's edge. Install the rear engine compartment cover to shield the engine. Cut aluminum composite panels to make the dashboard mount. Fit the aluminum composite panel into the front cockpit area. Apply specialized adhesive to the iron frame to attach the panel. Securely fix the dashboard panel in place. Add white trim strips to enhance the aesthetics. The cockpit area is gradually nearing completion with the sports steering wheel. Continue applying silicone sealant to the grooves under the boat's floor. Lay the plastic boards on the floor to create a flat walking surface. Align the floor panels to fit snugly against the hull's contour. Accurately measure and cut the final floor panel for the stern. Finish the flooring, creating a clean, flat surface. Route the steering cable along the side of the boat to the rear engine compartment. Run beads of silicone sealant along the floor edges to seal the gaps. Cut, angle, iron to fabricate the landing gear and transport wheels. Weld and assemble U-shaped frames to clamp and hold the wheels. Grind smooth the sharp edges of the newly welded wheel frames. Spray black anti-rust paint on the wheel frame assembly. Attach the rubber wheels to the frame and insert the bolt pins. The two rear auxiliary wheel assemblies are completely built. Drill holes in the hull to bolt on the wheel system. Firmly attach the two wheel frames to the stern, making the boat easy to move on land. Drill additional small holes behind the engine compartment. Prepare electrical switches to install in the newly drilled holes. Mount the switches on the boat side for easy on-off operation. Fabricate the front tow bar with a triangular frame mechanism. Paint the entire tow bar black to protect the metal from rust. Attach a small wheel to the tip of the tow bar, allowing it to stand balanced on its own. Hook the tow bar to the bow and insert the safety pin. Use the tow bar to gently pry the bow off the ground. Now you can tow the boat around as easily as a wagon. Remove the air filter cover to access it. The engine's carburetor assembly. Assemble the mechanical throttle edge to control engine speed. Connect the throttle cable from the cockpit to the engine's throttle valve. Check the throttle cables, pull and release for smooth operation. Reinstall the air filter and tighten the mounting screws. Under the cockpit floor, install the throttle pedal for control. This pedal will pull the cable to transmit the throttle signal to the rear. Drill a hole on the dashboard to prepare for the ignition switch installation. Connect the starter wiring to the ignition switch assembly. Insert the switch into the drilled hole and tighten the mounting nut on the dashboard. Bundle the electrical wires neatly and hide them carefully under the hull ribs. Connect the control wiring to the engine's electrical system. Crimp the copper terminals tightly onto the power cables to connect the battery. Screw the power cables onto the 2 battery terminals. Place the 2 leather upholstered seats into the cockpit. Latch the engine cover and rear seat securely. Pour gasoline into the engine's fuel tank. Close the fuel cap and lower the engine hatch. Insert the key and turn it to test and start the engine's electrical system. Press the throttle pedal to see if the engine runs smoothly and powerfully. Everything is ready. Pull the boat out of the workshop toward the riverbank. Moving the boat to the water's edge is very easy. Slowly push the boat's bow to slide it into the river. Remove the front tow bar and auxiliary wheel assembly. Continue removing the 2 wheel forks on both sides of the stern. Bring the propeller shaft assembly to the rear of the boat for installation. Install the propeller shaft coupling onto the engine shaft protruding from the hull. Attach the steering cable to the rudder tiller and lock the safety pin. Slowly lower the propeller assembly into the water in preparation for departure. Step onto the boat, sit in the driving position, and start the engine. Press the throttle to leave the dock. The boat glides very smoothly. The boat accelerates quickly on the wide river, leaving a trail of white foam. The steering system is very responsive, helping the boat easily navigate through turns. Finally returning to the dock safely, concluding a very successful test run.